I thought I had lost him forever. Captain Ethan Hayes mutters under his breath as he steps into the rain-soaked shelter, the scent of wet concrete and aged wood mingling with the faint metallic tang of the kennel doors. The dim overhead lights flicker, casting long shadows that dance across the rows of empty cages, and somewhere in the back, a soft whimper slices through the quiet, pulling at a memory Ethan has carried for years. Each step he takes echoes, boots scraping against the wet floor, water dripping from the brim of his jacket. Outside, the wind rattles the corrugated roof, carrying the distant sound of a storm rolling in from the coast, a reminder of the chaos that once tore him and Shadow apart. The shelter is still, except for the faint scuffle of paws on concrete, a hesitant sniffing that grows louder as Ethan nears the final row. Shadow sits curled, fur slick with rain, amber eyes wide and scanning, a mix of wariness and something Ethan cannot yet name. The dog's ears twitch as a door creaks, and he flinches at the sound, muscles tense, tail low. Ethan slows, crouching to meet the dog's gaze, voice low and steady, soft as a prayer. "It's me, Shadow. It's Ethan." The words float across the damp air, carrying the weight of missions shared, nights in foxholes, the long hours of training and trust built through years in foreign deserts. Shadow lifts his head, nose twitching as if the scent of Ethan, faint but undeniable, curls through his senses. The dog's body stiffens, eyes narrowing, ears flicking forward, uncertainty warring with instinct. Ethan extends a hand, trembling slightly, fingers grazing the wet fur at Shadow's shoulder, feeling the taut muscles under the soaked coat. A quiet shiver runs down both of them, a resonance of shared history, a connection neither time nor distance could sever. The shelter's smell, old straw, damp wood, and faint antiseptic, blends with the memory of dust, heat, and gunpowder from faraway lands. Shadow's amber gaze softens, hesitation breaking, but recognition is still suspended, delicate as frost on a morning branch. Ethan's chest rises and falls in measured rhythm, matching the dog's cautious breaths. The storm outside grows louder, rain lashing against the windows, yet inside, a fragile bubble of suspended time holds them in focus, every heartbeat magnified. Then a faint whine escapes Shadow, a pitch that cuts through the tension, and the tail twitches, a small, almost imperceptible sign, yet enough to stir hope in Ethan's heart. He murmurs encouragement, voice gentle, inviting, threading their past into the present moment. The dog shifts forward, hesitant paws clicking on the concrete, ears forward, nose low, tracking the scent of the man who once led him through deserts, firefights, and nights under foreign stars. Their eyes lock, amber meeting hazel, a silent conversation spanning miles and years, the storm outside forgotten, the chaos of the past momentarily irrelevant. Shadow's tail lifts slightly, a flicker of warmth in his stance, muscles relaxing just enough to hint at the bond that refuses to break. Ethan leans forward, breaths mingling with the damp air, fingers grazing Shadow's neck as a soft growl vibrates through the dog, resonant with memory and trust. The shelter holds its breath with them, the storm outside a muted roar compared to the quiet awakening inside this corner of the world. And for a single heartbeat, the past and present converge, leaving Ethan and Shadow suspended in anticipation of the moment when recognition will finally ignite, a spark to illuminate the shadows of years spent apart, teasing the reunion that promises tears, joy, and the warmth of loyalty rediscovered. The storm outside continued to drum against the shelter roof, sheets of rain sliding down the windows in relentless streaks, but inside, time slowed to the rhythm of hesitant paws and careful breaths. Ethan shifted slightly, keeping his weight low to avoid startling Shadow, watching the dog as he inched forward, every muscle taut, every whisker twitching at the faint scent of familiarity in the air. The kennel smelled of straw and damp fur, faintly of disinfectant, but mixed with the trace of the desert dust from missions long past. Shadow paused, ears flicking toward the soft squeak of a metal latch as another dog shuffled nearby, and a low whine escaped his throat, a sound that carried years of separation and longing. Ethan murmured gently, tone calm and unwavering, his hand extending, open a silent promise of patience and care, fingers grazing the slick fur at Shadow's shoulders. The dog leaned in slightly, hesitant, nose twitching, tail flicking with uncertainty, as if measuring the truth in Ethan's presence against memories stored deep within him. Outside, the wind shifted, and a distant roll of thunder mirrored the tension in the room, a natural soundtrack to the fragile reunion unfolding. Ethan let out a breath he did not realize he was holding, eyes locking with Shadow's amber gaze, reading the story etched there. War, loyalty, time lost, and the quiet desire to reconnect. He whispered softly, words threaded with memory and hope, recounting commands once drilled into muscle and mind, the cadence familiar and comforting. Shadow's head tilted, a subtle recognition sparking, paws shifting to the side, muscles relaxing imperceptibly, and the faintest wag of the tail betrayed the understanding growing inside him. Ethan inched closer, voice steady and low, recounting the nights they had spent together under alien stars, the scent of sand, the metallic tang of distant conflict, and the warmth of camaraderie that had defined them both. Shadow's ears pricked fully, eyes brightening, the hesitation fading like mist under a rising sun. He took another cautious step forward, nose brushing Ethan's jacket, tail lifting just enough to signal that the bridge between past and present was forming. The shelter, dim and damp, seemed to recede around them, leaving only the man and the dog, the unspoken dialogue of recognition and trust flowing silently in the space between breaths. A soft whimper escaped Shadow, carrying a note of joy and relief, and Ethan responded with a whispered reassurance, voice threading warmth through the tension, guiding the dog gently closer, closer still. The rhythm of steps, breaths, and heartbeats aligned, a subtle music of reunion, and with one deliberate motion, Ethan extended both hands, inviting Shadow fully into the embrace that had been imagined, longed for, and now approached reality. Shadow paused a heartbeat, then leaned in, pressing against Ethan, paws settling, head resting lightly, eyes reflecting the storm outside, but also the calm blooming between them. It was a fragile peace, a tentative step into trust renewed, the room holding a quiet reverence for the moment, suspended, as if time itself honored the bridge being rebuilt. Outside, rain continued its relentless fall, but inside, warmth spread in silent waves, a promise of healing, a prelude to the joy and connection yet to fully reveal itself, leaving the scene suspended on the edge of the heart's release and the moment of full recognition still just beyond the next breath. Shadow finally settled against Ethan, a slow exhale vibrating through his chest as if releasing years of tension in one breath. The shelter's fluorescent lights flickered softly, casting long shadows across the damp concrete floor, while the scent of straw and wet fur mingled with the faint aroma of rain seeping through the roof. Ethan's hands rested lightly on Shadow's shoulders, feeling the warmth of fur, the subtle rhythm of his heartbeat, a silent testament to trust rekindled. Outside, the storm began to ease, rain softening to a gentle drizzle, the distant rumble of thunder fading, leaving only the soft patter of droplets against the shelter windows. Ethan slowly rose, guiding Shadow to walk beside him through the narrow aisle of kennels, each step careful, measured, yet filled with a new energy born from recognition. Shadow moved in perfect sync, ears flicking at each sound, tail wagging with a gentle cadence, signaling the fragile but growing bond restored. They paused by the final kennel, where a younger dog watched curiously, tilting its head as Shadow gave a soft bark, a gentle warning and an invitation all at once. Ethan knelt, voice low and steady, recounting the small victories, the moments of patience, the walks through desert dust and sunshine, embedding each word with memory, a tapestry connecting past and present. Shadow's amber eyes glistened with understanding, nose brushing against Ethan's hand, a soft whine escaping that spoke volumes without words. The shelter seemed to shrink around them, the concrete walls and metal doors fading into the background as the space between man and dog expanded, filled with warmth, recognition, and the quiet music of reunion. Ethan whispered again, recounting old commands, soft praise, the subtle tones that had once guided Shadow through drills and missions, and now guided him through a new chapter of trust and companionship. Shadow responded with a gentle nudge, leaning fully into Ethan, paws patting softly on the floor, muscles relaxing, movements flowing with a fluidity that spoke of instinct finally aligned with memory. Outside, the clouds began to break, faint rays of sunlight piercing the gray, reflecting on the damp shelter floor in soft streaks, illuminating the reunion in a subtle, cinematic glow. Ethan's heart lifted with each heartbeat, each breath of shared air, knowing that the past, though marked by separation, could be bridged by patience, love, and the enduring loyalty of a companion who never truly forgot. Shadow looked up, amber eyes meeting Ethan's hazel gaze, a silent promise passing between them that neither distance, nor time, nor circumstance could diminish the bond they shared. The shelter held its breath alongside them, a quiet reverence in the space as man and dog stood side by side, paws brushing hands, tails shifting gently, steps in harmony, and for a moment, the world outside, storm, shelter, time itself, faded away, leaving only the profound, unspoken understanding of hearts reunited and trust reaffirmed, the scene poised on the cusp of a journey that would carry them forward together, into light, calm, and the promise of days filled with shared purpose. The rain had finally tapered to a soft drizzle, and the shelter smelled of damp straw and the faint metallic tang of the gates, a reminder of the storm that had both separated and reunited them. Ethan slowly guided Shadow through the narrow aisles, each step deliberate, every movement a careful dance of trust and reassurance. Shadow's paws made quiet thuds on the wet concrete floor, ears flicking to every sound. The soft shuffle of other dogs, the distant drip of water from the roof, the gentle hum of the fluorescent lights above. Ethan's hand rested lightly on Shadow's back, tracing the familiar ridge along his spine, feeling the warmth and strength returning in measured beats. They paused at a small window, raindrops sliding down the glass, and Ethan allowed Shadow to peer out, nose pressed gently against the cool surface, eyes scanning the gray world beyond, as if taking in both the past and the possibilities ahead. Outside, the fading storm left a soft mist curling in the air, the scent of wet earth and pine weaving through the shelter, mingling with the quiet exhalations of the dog and the man. Ethan spoke softly, recounting the paths they had walked together, the commands and moments of laughter and quiet watchfulness, each word a thread reconnecting the tapestry of their shared past. Shadow tilted his head, amber eyes glinting with understanding, a subtle shift of weight forward, tail lifting slightly, signaling the first steps of recognition and renewed companionship. As they moved together toward the larger kennel space, the sounds of other dogs softened into background noise, the focus narrowing to the rhythm of their shared breath and synchronized steps. Ethan paused again, crouching to meet Shadow's gaze, voice low and steady, recounting stories of distant deserts, of nights beneath foreign stars, of lessons learned and trust earned, each phrase infusing the present moment with the weight of history. Shadow responded with a soft whine, a gentle nudge against Ethan's hand, muscles loosening, body relaxing just enough to let the warmth of their bond fill the room. The faint sunlight began to pierce the clouds outside, casting streaks across the concrete floor, illuminating small flecks in Shadow's fur, highlighting the contours of his attentive posture, and Ethan felt a stirring of hope, a quiet understanding that the space between loss and reunion was closing. He whispered again, praising Shadow for remembering, for returning, for simply being there, and the dog leaned further into the warmth of Ethan's presence, settling in with trust growing with each heartbeat. Around them, the shelter seemed to recede, walls and doors fading into the periphery as the focus centered entirely on the subtle movements, the breathing, the quiet dialogue of eyes and presence. Shadow's tail lifted fully, a slow wag that mirrored Ethan's own rising relief, and together they took measured steps toward the open door at the end of the hall, the outside light spilling in, soft and golden, promising new beginnings. For a moment, all that existed was the space between man and dog, the gentle press of fur against hand, the shared rhythm of trust, and the quiet power of reunion, and Ethan knew that whatever lay beyond the shelter, whatever days and hours awaited, they would face them together, guided by the steadfast loyalty of a companion who had remembered, who had waited, and who had returned. The first light of morning filtered softly through the shelter windows, scattering a golden glow across the damp floor and illuminating the subtle movements of Shadow as he followed Ethan with cautious but growing confidence. Each step they took together was measured, a silent choreography of trust rebuilding, paws and boots echoing lightly against the concrete, mingling with the faint creak of the shelter doors swinging in the breeze. Ethan spoke softly, recounting the paths they had traversed together, the long nights under foreign skies, and the quiet moments of companionship that had shaped their bond, voice steady and warm, carrying reassurance through the small space. Shadow's ears flicked with attention, amber eyes tracking every subtle inflection, tail wagging in slow, deliberate motions that mirrored the rhythm of their shared breathing. The shelter smelled faintly of straw, wet fur, and the lingering hint of rain, a sensory reminder of the storm that had passed and the calm that now settled in its wake. As they moved toward the larger exercise yard at the back, the open door framed a sliver of sky, clouds tinged with pink and gold, and the distant sound of birds greeting the morning sun filtered in, blending with the soft patting of Shadow's paws. Ethan lowered his hand to rest gently on Shadow's back, feeling the warmth and the subtle tension ease, muscles relaxing, a slow exhale passing through both of them in unison, a quiet affirmation of the trust restored. They paused near a patch of sunlight streaming through the high windows, dust motes floating lazily in the beams, and Ethan traced the line of Shadow's fur, murmuring words of praise and gentle encouragement, recounting commands and moments of care that had once guided them in harmony. Shadow leaned in, nose brushing Ethan's jacket, and a soft whine escaped, carrying both recognition and relief, a sound that resonated through the empty shelter like a small victory song. The quiet around them seemed to amplify the significance of the moment. Every distant drip of water from the roof, every rustle from the other kennels fading into the background as the bond between man and dog became the central rhythm of the space. Ethan adjusted his stance, voice still low, recounting shared memories of open deserts, quiet nights under starlit skies, and the discipline that had taught both patience and connection, each word a bridge across the years of separation. Shadow's gaze never left Ethan's, amber eyes reflecting trust, loyalty, and the faintest glimmer of anticipation, tail flicking in subtle signals of readiness to engage, to follow, to remain by his side. They moved slowly across the shelter floor, bodies in harmony, breath and heartbeat in rhythm, a gentle cadence of reunion unfolding with each careful step. Outside, the morning sun continued to rise, spreading light over the wet pavement, painting the shelter with warmth and soft color, as Ethan and Shadow stepped fully into the quiet promise of a new day together, a moment suspended in the delicate balance of patience, recognition, and the enduring power of loyalty that had bridged the distance and time between them, preparing them both for the next chapter of shared steps, quiet walks, and the subtle joy of hearts finally reunited. The morning light strengthened, casting a warm, golden hue across the shelter yard where puddles reflected the soft beams, and the sky above shifted from gray to pale blue. Ethan knelt briefly by the open gate, letting Shadow step ahead with cautious enthusiasm, each paw leaving a wet imprint on the concrete. The dog's ears flicked at every sound, the distant chirp of birds, the soft clatter of shelter doors, and the faint scuff of other paws, but his gaze never left Ethan, amber eyes glinting with curiosity and trust. The smell of damp earth and straw mingled with the faint scent of morning dew, carrying memories of desert winds and the quiet nights spent under foreign stars, reminders of the bond forged in faraway lands. Ethan spoke softly, recounting the routines and commands they had once shared, threading each word with warmth and memory, a bridge between separation and reunion. Shadow responded with subtle movements, nose twitching, tail lifting and curling with tentative joy, leaning closer when Ethan extended a hand, brushing his fur gently, as if confirming the continuity of trust. The shelter was quiet, save for the soft patter of rain fading on the roof and the low hum of morning activity, but the space between Ethan and Shadow seemed suspended, a bubble of time where past, and present converged. As they moved toward the yard, sunlight broke fully through the clouds, illuminating the water-streaked grass and casting long shadows of dog and man stretching across the ground. Ethan felt the gentle rise and fall of Shadow's chest beneath his hand, each breath a steady rhythm, each glance a confirmation of recognition, a reassurance that the bond they had nurtured had not been lost. Shadow circled lightly, sniffing at the edges of the yard, tail wagging in measured sweeps, muscles relaxed yet attentive, ready to respond to a word, a gesture, or the faintest hint of encouragement. Ethan followed, voice calm and deliberate, recounting the quiet lessons of patience, the subtle joys of companionship, the rewards of small victories and trust earned. Shadow's amber eyes gleamed, focused, ears moving with the rhythm of the man's words, and he leaned closer at each step, a gentle nudge confirming the silent communication. Outside, the sun fully claimed the sky, the rain gone, leaving a crisp scent in the air and soft warmth across the concrete and grass. Ethan paused, letting Shadow explore, observing the dog's tentative confidence, the way he moved with purpose yet remained tethered to the unspoken bond, attentive, responsive, and grounded in shared history. The shelter walls seemed to dissolve around them, leaving only the shared rhythm of steps, breaths, and quiet understanding between man and dog. Each movement, each look, each breath carried layers of trust, the reassurance of recognition, and the quiet, growing joy of reunion, a moment stretched in time, yet fleeting, holding the promise of the days ahead where trust would deepen, playfulness would return, and the companionship that had weathered distance, uncertainty, and separation would flourish anew under the rising sun, leaving both man and dog poised for the next steps of life together, a silent pact of loyalty and love. Reaffirmed, Shadow paused at the edge of the yard, amber eyes locking onto Ethan as if measuring the weight of the morning, and Ethan crouched slightly, hand hovering over the dog's shoulder, voice low and even, carrying stories of distant deserts, long nights under foreign stars, and the quiet strength of companionship that had defined them. The sunlight slanted through the windows, casting golden stripes across the concrete and wet grass, highlighting the gentle rise and fall of Shadow's chest and the subtle flicks of his ears, each movement telling a story of trust rebuilt and patience rewarded. Ethan took a slow step forward, encouraging Shadow with a soft murmur, recounting commands and gentle praise, and the dog responded with measured steps, tail sweeping in quiet approval, nose twitching as he inhaled the scent of familiarity threading through the morning air. The shelter, though still containing other animals and the faint echoes of caretakers moving in the distance, seemed to dissolve around them, leaving only the rhythm of synchronized steps, breaths, and the subtle music of recognition, a dialogue unspoken but deeply felt. Shadow tilted his head at a familiar sound of a door creaking, ears forward, and Ethan smiled, seeing the subtle spark of awareness in the dog's gaze, a glimmer that spoke of memories reawakening, the bond that distance could not sever now threading the present with the past. The grass underfoot glistened with residual rain, dew rising in tiny misty columns as Shadow sniffed lightly, each careful movement a step toward full trust, each wag of the tail a quiet note in the growing melody of reunion. Ethan continued, words soft and deliberate, threading stories of training, quiet nights on watch, shared meals, and moments of stillness that had forged loyalty into a palpable, almost tangible force between them. Shadow pressed closer, leaning lightly into Ethan's side, eyes fixed on him, a gentle whine escaping in a soft cadence that echoed the rhythm of their hearts, and Ethan reached down, hand tracing the line of Shadow's back, feeling the muscles ease, the tension melting away under the weight of acknowledgement and the subtle joy of rediscovered companionship. A bird called from a nearby branch, wings brushing lightly through the morning air, and Shadow's ears twitched, eyes reflecting the calm and anticipation of a partnership reestablished, ready for the days ahead. Ethan's voice wove stories of past missions and quiet victories, drawing out the silent language of their bond, each word anchoring Shadow in the now, each pause an invitation for the dog to step fully into the recognition that had been long delayed. Shadow's tail wagged in fuller arcs, paws patting softly across the wet patches of the yard, nose nudging Ethan's hand as he leaned fully into the warmth and security of the connection, a partnership that had survived absence and uncertainty. The shelter's walls receded in importance, replaced by the shared rhythm of heartbeats, the mutual awareness of trust, and the subtle movements of recognition that spoke louder than words ever could, marking a moment where past separation met the gentle unfolding of reunion, a poised calm before the next chapter of shared walks, quiet observations, and the continued reaffirmation of loyalty in every glance, step, and breath taken together under the softening morning sky. Shadow paused mid-step as a thin shaft of sunlight broke through the morning clouds, illuminating the slight shimmer of wet fur on his back and the soft moisture in the shelter yard. Ethan watched closely, noting the subtle changes in the dog's posture, the tilt of his head, the gentle wagging of his tail that had grown steadier over the past hour. The air smelled of damp straw and fresh dew, mingling with the faint metallic scent of the shelter gates, a sensory reminder of the shelter's confines, but also of the small freedom that waited outside. Ethan crouched slightly, voice calm and deliberate, recounting small, vivid moments of their shared past, quiet nights on watch, early mornings traversing desert sands, the muted laughter shared under starlit skies, and the rhythm of trust that had once bound them in the heat of faraway missions. Shadow leaned in subtly, pressing lightly against Ethan, paws shifting on the wet concrete, muscles easing with the familiarity of presence and sound. Each breath they took seemed to align, a gentle cadence of connection forming between them, heightened by the soft patter of rain droplets still clinging to the roof above. Ethan's hand traced the line of Shadow's back, fingers moving slowly over wet fur, grounding them both in the moment, instilling reassurance that the past and present could coexist in the bond they were rebuilding. The shelter walls receded from focus, and the yard expanded in their perception, each puddle reflecting light, each patch of grass catching droplets of sunlight, a canvas for cautious exploration. Shadow sniffed lightly at the ground, tail flicking, ears alert, but now glancing up repeatedly at Ethan as if checking for guidance, confirming that the presence he had remembered for years was fully restored. Ethan murmured words of encouragement, recounting commands that had once been routine but now carried weight in the delicate dance of recognition and reunion. The gentle morning wind carried scents of pine and damp earth from the surrounding woods, weaving a tapestry of sensory cues that connected memory and instinct. Shadow's amber eyes met Ethan's hazel gaze, and in that moment, the subtle signs of acknowledgement grew stronger, the slight wag of a tail, the shift of paws forward, the soft lean into Ethan's side forming a narrative of trust, patience, and the quiet joy of rediscovery. Each step forward in the yard became a shared rhythm, a dance of companionship that spoke more loudly than words, filled with the layered history of separation, memory, and rekindled loyalty. The shelter's noises faded further into the background, replaced by the sound of synchronized breathing, the soft pat of paws, the gentle click of Ethan's boots, and the intangible resonance of hearts reconnecting. The morning light strengthened, casting long shadows that intertwined on the wet ground, a visual echo of the unity forming between man and dog, capturing a moment that held both the weight of the past and the promise of new beginnings, poised delicately on the edge of trust fully restored, anticipation of exploration and shared journeys just beyond the gate, and the silent but powerful reaffirmation of loyalty, companionship, and mutual understanding that would guide every step they took. Together, Shadow's paws moved steadily on the damp concrete, ears alert and tail curling with anticipation as Ethan guided him toward the far corner of the shelter yard where the open gate revealed the wider world beyond. The sunlight warmed the glistening wet grass, reflecting off tiny puddles, casting shimmering patterns that danced with each step they took together. Ethan spoke softly, recounting the days apart, the missions they had endured, the quiet moments of observation and patience that had carried them through separation, threading his words with care so that Shadow might follow not only by sight, but by memory. The air was crisp, filled with the mingled scents of earth, wet straw, and the lingering trace of pine from nearby trees. each inhale carrying a whisper of familiarity that tugged at Shadow's instincts and memories. Shadow paused, nose twitching at the soft rustle of leaves, then leaned into Ethan's side. The subtle press of fur against fabric, a quiet acknowledgement, a gesture as potent as words. Ethan adjusted his pace, knees bent, voice low and measured, narrating small victories, moments of trust and guidance, each syllable weaving a bridge between past and present. The dog's amber eyes flickered with recognition, subtle shifts in posture, tail movements, and the gentle nudge of the nose confirming that connection, that understanding restored. Outside, the wind stirred the shelter's outer doors, carrying distant sounds of birds, and the soft murmur of leaves brushing against each other. Yet within the yard, a rhythm of quiet communion unfolded, breaths and steps in sync, the shared pulse of loyalty and patience manifest in motion. Ethan paused near a patch of sunlight, letting Shadow take the lead, watching the subtle sway of muscles, the careful placement of paws, the lift and tilt of the head, ears flicking at familiar scents and sounds, responding in measured ways that spoke louder than words could convey. He murmured reminders, commands once drilled into memory, softly, with warmth and care, and Shadow responded in kind, nudging closer, tail wagging, eyes reflecting understanding and acceptance, the unspoken bond deepening with every measured step. The shelter walls seemed to fade away, leaving only the yard, the golden light, and the quiet dialogue of presence and acknowledgement. Each movement, each breath, each small shift of weight carried meaning, reinforcing trust, loyalty, and the subtle joy of companionship rediscovered. Ethan extended a hand again, brushing along Shadow's neck, and the dog pressed in fully, settling against him, amber eyes meeting Hazel with an intensity that spoke of years remembered and lessons learned. Together, they paused at the threshold of the gate, lights spilling across them, the wet grass beneath their feet, a gentle breeze carrying scent and warmth, a poised moment suspended between the familiar past and the promise of new adventures, anticipation, and the enduring reassurance that the bond between them, tested by time and distance, had not only survived but grown stronger, ready to carry them forward into the world together. Steps measured and trust reaffirmed. The sunlight had grown stronger, spilling golden rays across the yard as Ethan and Shadow moved together, steps synchronizing with a rhythm that felt almost sacred. Gaze never left Ethan, amber eyes reflecting trust and recognition. Ethan lowered his hand slowly, letting Shadow take the lead, while murmuring soft encouragement, words infused with memory, patience, and the subtle joy of reunion. Each step forward was deliberate, measured, yet filled with anticipation, a gentle push into the freedom and openness beyond the shelter walls. The grass underfoot was slick from the previous rain, glistening in the sunlight, and Shadow sniffed lightly, tail swaying with the rhythm of newfound confidence, muscles easing with each movement. Ethan spoke quietly, recounting familiar commands, stories of shared missions, and the quiet companionship that had shaped them both, each word weaving a thread that anchored Shadow to the present while connecting the past. Shadow responded with gentle nudges and shifts, leaning against Ethan, pushing forward, tail flicking in subtle arcs, a communication as rich and precise as words. The yard stretched wide ahead, sunlight illuminating every glistening leaf, every damp patch of grass, casting long shadows that stretched and merged in a warm tapestry. Ethan paused, letting the dog explore within reach, hand resting lightly along his back, feeling the steady rhythm of heartbeat and breath, a silent dialogue affirming recognition, trust, and loyalty. Shadow turned toward him occasionally, amber eyes glinting with intelligence and warmth, ears pricked as if confirming the story Ethan had shared through presence, touch, and voice. The gentle breeze carried the scent of the earth, the distant smell of pine, and the faint aroma of the previous rain, weaving a sensory map that guided Shadow in subtle, instinctive ways. Ethan continued speaking softly, recounting quiet victories, nights of watchfulness, moments of stillness that had built trust, each syllable reinforcing the bond as Shadow moved confidently beside him, nudging closer, pressing in, tail wagging in gentle arcs that mirrored the calm and security of the man he remembered. The yard seemed to expand with each step, walls and shelter fading from mind, leaving only the present, the dog, the man, the sunlight, and the quiet music of recognition and reunion filling every corner of the space. Shadow's amber eyes never left Ethan's hazel gaze, every movement, every subtle gesture reinforcing the bridge between separation and the gentle joy of renewed companionship. They moved together toward the far end of the yard, light spilling across the damp earth, shadows stretching long and intertwining, and in the quiet harmony of synchronized steps, breaths, and presence, the moment held the delicate balance of past memories meeting present acknowledgement, a poised prelude to the unfolding days of shared walks, playful explorations, and the reaffirmed promise of loyalty carried forward with every heartbeat, step, and glance taken together under the warming sun. The sun climbed higher, casting a soft warmth across the yard, illuminating the damp grass and the subtle shimmer of Shadow's coat as he trotted confidently beside Ethan. Each step was deliberate, a gentle rhythm of connection, echoing the heartbeat of renewed companionship. The morning air was crisp, carrying scents of pine and wet earth from the nearby woods, a tapestry of smells that drew memories from both past missions and quiet moments shared in the evenings under foreign stars. Ethan's hand rested lightly on Shadow's back, fingers tracing the familiar ridge of fur, grounding them in the present while speaking silently of trust, patience, and care. Shadow leaned closer, pressing lightly against Ethan, tail swishing in slow, deliberate arcs, muscles relaxed yet attentive, absorbing every inflection of voice, every subtle gesture. The yard seemed to expand, the shelter fading from perception, leaving only the warmth of sunlight, the gentle rustle of leaves, and the delicate music of synchronized steps and breaths between man and dog. Ethan murmured softly, recounting memories of quiet victories, small routines, and moments of camaraderie, each word threading reassurance and continuity into the fabric of the morning. Shadow responded with subtle movements, nudging closer, tilting his head, lifting ears, and flicking tail in gentle acknowledgement, a silent conversation that conveyed recognition and the deep joy of reunion. The golden light shifted across the yard, highlighting droplets of water on grass blades, the faint shimmer of Shadow's amber eyes, and the careful precision of paws moving across soft soil, each motion a testament to regained confidence and the enduring bond between them. Ethan guided him toward a shaded corner, where the earth was softer and dappled with sunlight, allowing Shadow to explore cautiously yet with growing curiosity, every sniff and paw placement a step in the restoration of trust. The breeze carried the faint sound of distant birds and rustling leaves, mingling with the warmth of the sun and the lingering scents of the yard, creating an environment both familiar and comforting. Shadow's eyes met Ethan's frequently, amber reflecting hazel, a silent affirmation of recognition and the mutual understanding that had been restored. Ethan lowered his voice, recounting the small commands and moments of attention that had once structured their days together, words soft, patient, and rhythmic, drawing Shadow into the present, into a shared awareness that celebrated both the past and the new beginnings forming before them. The dog pressed fully against Ethan's side, moving in alignment with each step, breathing in unison, the warmth of fur and presence forming a cocoon of trust. Each movement, each glance, each breath reinforced the quiet joy and reassurance of reunion, the gentle harmony of companionship rediscovered. The yard, the sunlight, the scents, and the sounds coalesced into a serene space, a pause in time where loyalty and love spoke without words, leaving Ethan and Shadow poised to continue forward together, steps synchronized, hearts aligned, trust reaffirmed, and the promise of many days of shared walks, quiet observation, and companionship that had endured through separation finally realized in the warmth of morning light. The warmth of the morning continued to settle across the yard, soft beams of sunlight catching the faint shimmer of Shadow's coat as he moved with measured confidence beside Ethan. Each step resonated with the quiet rhythm of trust restored, a gentle cadence that spoke louder than words, echoing the bond that had endured separation, uncertainty, and the passage. of time. Ethan's hand rested lightly on Shadow's shoulder, fingers tracing the familiar lines of fur, grounding both of them in the present moment while acknowledging the shared history that had brought them here. The air carried the scent of damp grass, pine from the surrounding woods, and faint traces of the shelter, a sensory map that Shadow followed instinctively, pausing occasionally to sniff and explore, yet always returning his gaze to Ethan, amber eyes reflecting recognition, reassurance, and quiet joy. Ethan spoke softly, recounting the moments that had defined them: long nights on watch, small routines of care, shared moments of quiet observation and mutual reliance, every word a tether to the past, every pause an invitation to move forward together. Shadow responded subtly, tail flicking, ears pricked, gentle nudges against Ethan, body relaxing fully into the touch, each movement an affirmation of the trust now firmly in place. The yard stretched wide before them, sunlight warming the wet patches of grass and illuminating droplets on leaves that danced lightly in the morning breeze, creating a serene stage for the unfolding reunion. Ethan guided Shadow slowly, allowing the dog to take the lead in small explorations, each sniff and paw placement a careful negotiation of curiosity and trust, demonstrating the renewed freedom tempered by the bond that had been restored. The shelter receded in importance, walls and doors fading from attention as the rhythm of synchronized steps, shared breaths, and attentive glances became the focal point, each moment layered with recognition, patience, and the quiet power of loyalty. Shadow moved with a fluidity born of instinct and memory, glancing toward Ethan frequently, amber eyes bright, ears alert yet relaxed, tail waving in gentle arcs, a physical language of acknowledgement and reassurance. Ethan murmured softly, praising small gestures, recounting commands and routines with measured care, weaving the history of their companionship into the present with a gentle cadence that invited the dog to fully inhabit the moment. The breeze carried the soft sounds of the surrounding woods, rustling leaves, distant bird calls, and mixed with the warmth of sunlight and the faint scent of wet earth, forming a backdrop that amplified the quiet intimacy of their connection. Shadow pressed in gently, leaning closer, the subtle shift of weight a tangible acknowledgement of trust renewed, muscles easing as the dog's confidence strengthened. Every glance, every careful step, every shared breath affirmed the enduring bond between man and dog, the resilience of companionship and the quiet joy of hearts reunited. Together they paused, framed by the golden light of the morning, the yard stretched before them as a canvas of promise, each step forward a continuation of trust rebuilt, and each movement a testament to the enduring power of loyalty, patience, and love that had survived distance and time, ready to carry them into the calm, shared days ahead. The yard lay bathed in soft, late morning light, golden rays streaming across the damp grass and pooling in tiny puddles that reflected the sky above, each droplet catching the light like a tiny prism. Shadow trotted beside Ethan, tail lifted high, ears alert yet relaxed, amber eyes bright with renewed confidence and recognition, a gentle breeze ruffling the fur along his back. Ethan walked slowly, voice low and even, recounting quiet memories, the routines and gentle commands that had shaped their bond, threading reassurance and warmth through every word, each syllable a reminder that the connection they shared had endured. The soft scent of pine from the surrounding trees mingled with the damp earth and faint traces of shelter straw, creating a sensory map that both guided and comforted Shadow, anchoring him to the present while recalling the history of trust they had built. Shadow leaned in, nudging Ethan lightly, pressing against him with subtle warmth, muscles relaxing fully, tail sweeping the ground in slow arcs, a physical testament to recognition and loyalty restored. Ethan extended a hand along the dog's back, fingers brushing gently over fur, feeling the steady rhythm of heartbeat and breath, a silent dialogue passing between them in the gentle cadence of shared presence. The yard seemed to expand, walls and boundaries fading into the background as the sunlight highlighted glistening blades of grass, shimmering water on puddles, and the subtle movements of Shadow as he explored carefully yet confidently, always returning his gaze to Ethan, amber eyes glinting with trust and quiet joy. Ethan spoke softly, recounting moments of past missions, long nights on watch, and small routines of care, each word a thread weaving past and present into a tapestry of reassurance. Each pause inviting Shadow further into the harmony of recognition and companionship. Shadow responded with measured movements, nudging, leaning, sniffing, tail swaying gently, a silent symphony of acknowledgement and renewed connection. The gentle wind carried distant bird calls and rustling leaves, mixing with the warmth of sunlight and the faint scent of fresh earth, creating an ambient soundtrack to the quiet reunion. Each step across the yard was deliberate yet light, feet and paws in synchronized rhythm, breaths aligning, a shared heartbeat resonating in the soft hum of life around them. Ethan paused to glance around, taking in the expansive sky, the golden light, and the open yard, and he felt the weight of years of separation lift slightly, replaced by the delicate serenity of trust and loyalty restored. Shadow pressed fully against him, leaning with confidence, amber eyes reflecting hazel, tail moving with gentle arcs, acknowledging the man who had returned and the bond that had survived distance and time. Together, they paused at the center of the yard, the sunlight warming them, a gentle breeze brushing past, and in that suspended moment, the world outside seemed to fade, leaving only the profound, quiet understanding of companionship, patience rewarded, and trust renewed, a calm promise of days ahead filled with shared walks, exploration, quiet observation, and the enduring presence of a loyal friend who had returned.